The 26th day of July. Saint Anne, Mother of the Blessed Virgin. Saint Anne, the Mother of the Blessed Virgin, was a native of Bethlehem, a city 2 miles distant from Jerusalem, frequently mentioned in Holy Writ. Having passed her youth in unstained purity, she was married to a man named Joachim, who was born at Nazareth in Galilee, with whom she lived in such love and harmony, and at the same time so piously, that one could justly say of them what St. Luke writes of Zachary and Elizabeth. They were both just before God, walking in all the commandments and justifications of the Lord without blame. They divided their income into 3 parts, the first of which was used for the honor of God, and to adorn the temple, the second to assist the poor, and the third for their own subsistence. They employed the day in prayer, work suitable to their station in life, and charitable deeds. Their only grief was that, although so long married, they had no issue, and a barren marriage was, at that time, considered a disgrace, nay, almost a sign of a divine curse. Saddened by this sorrow, Saint Anne, as well as her spouse, prayed with many sighs and tears that God would take pity on them and remove the disgrace that was weighing them down. But when, after having prayed long and earnestly, they were not heard, they determined to bear patiently the will of the Almighty. As, however, Saint Anne knew that God required continual prayer, and that He had not given to men a certain time to ask for grace, she ceased not to implore heaven with great confidence for all that she believed was for His honor and her own salvation. Being one day in the temple, she felt her distress so deeply that she wept bitterly, but she remembered at the same time that there had been another Anne, spouse of Elkanah, who had been afflicted as she was, but whose prayers God at last had answered, making her the mother of the great prophet Samuel. While thinking of this, she perceived in herself an invincible desire to beg the Lord for a like grace. Hence she repeated her prayer with earnest fervor, promising at the same time that if God would grant her a child, she would consecrate it in the temple to His divine service, as the above-mentioned Anne had done. God answered the trusting, tearful prayer of His servant, and sent her, according to the opinion of the Holy Fathers, an angel, who announced to her that she would give birth to a child which, blessed among women, would become the mother of the long-expected Savior of the world. It is also believed that the angel told Saint Anne the name which she should give to the blessed fruit of her womb. The same revelation was made to Saint Joachim, and the happiness of both and their gratitude to the Almighty can be easily imagined. Their happiness was crowned when Saint Anne gave birth to her who was elected by God from all eternity to become the mother of His only Son. Who can describe the joy with which Anne pressed her newborn child to her heart, or the solicitude and love with which she brought it up? The knowledge that her blessed daughter was chosen by God to so great a dignity was incentive enough to leave nothing undone for her welfare. The mind of the blessed child was so far beyond her years, and her whole being so angelically innocent, that her education was an easy task, and Saint Anne deemed herself the happiest mother in the world, because God had entrusted to her so priceless a child. The graces which, through the presence of the Blessed Virgin, she received from heaven cannot but have been innumerable. For if, in after times, the house of Elizabeth and Zachary was, by a visit from Mary, filled with heavenly blessings, who can doubt that Saint Anne, who was the mother of the Blessed Virgin, was gifted with extraordinary graces? Knowing, however, that Mary was not only a precious treasure lent her by heaven, but also had consecrated herself to the service of the Almighty, Saint Anne did not fail to return to God what she had received from Him, and to offer willingly what she had so willingly promised. Hardly had Mary reached the age of 3 years when Anne and Joachim went with her to the temple at Jerusalem, and presenting her to the priest, consecrated her through him to the Almighty. Nothing could have been more painful to the pious parents than to separate from so perfect a child. But as they were more zealous for the glory of God than for their own joy, even though it was so pious, they made this sacrifice without complaining. Thus Mary was received among the number of those who, under the direction of the priests, served God in the temple, and were led in the path of virtue. After they had piously offered this agreeable sacrifice, the parents of the Blessed Virgin returned home, and spent the remainder of their days in good works, which were continued by Saint Anne, when she became a widow by the death of her holy spouse. As she had been an example to the virgins before her marriage, as well as a perfect model of a wife, so also was she in her widowhood, a shining light, For all those qualities which St. Paul afterwards required of a Christian widow, in his first epistle to Timothy, she went frequently to Jerusalem to see her holy daughter, and died, according to several authors, in the 79th year of her age. Mary, who at that time still lived in the temple, closed her eyes. As one cannot give to the Blessed Virgin a higher title than to call her Mother of God, thus Saint Anne cannot be more exalted than when she is called the mother of her who bore the Son of God. And for the very reason that she was chosen to be her mother, we must believe that the Almighty favored her here upon earth, with grace above all the saints, and raised her to high glory in heaven. Hence we may rightly suppose that her intercession with God is most powerful, and this is also testified by many examples.